Donald Trump's attention is definitely on China on a number of fronts. He's put a ban on Chinese students with any ties to the CCP from studying at American universities. Tell me about that, because that would have shook up the academic world.
Yeah, that's a big step as well, because of the, say, million foreign students who study at U.S. universities, fully a quarter of them are China, and they pay full tuition, unlike most Americans. So, it's likely that most of these people have links to an elite. If you're in China and you could afford that much money, you probably at one point or another have a family that's touched by the CCP. And these displace, of course, Americans and others from universities. Universities love it. It's a cash cow, but you have to ask, does Harvard with an endowment of $50 billion or Yale with an endowment of $40 billion, do they really need that much more money, especially if it's coming from China? And this will probably be a good way to put pressure on the Chinese government, because they may have to talk up China's future for domestic consumption. The reality is, if you look at their kids, they're all trying to get U.S. passports or passports from other countries, and they're not studying in China.
Well, that's a really interesting point you make there, because one of the criticisms, and this ties in what you're saying to Australian universities as well, Christian, we have this situation where universities have stopped being about educating the students of the country that they exist in, and they become more sort of hedge funds and migration agencies with classrooms attached. Because what I'm seeing, and I'd love your thoughts on whether this is what's happening in the U.S., because, as you say, these migrants or people coming in with the student visas, they see this as a path to residency and citizenship, and then the university gets to scoop up some money along the way. But, we know that sometimes education doesn't necessarily happen in the process. Is this a bigger chance to reframe and refocus these universities, which are having a big crisis with things like, junk science and junk studies and, kids coming out without degrees that are worth anything?
I think that's right, and that's what Rubio and President Trump are up to here. Because the theory originally was that people are going to come to America or come elsewhere to the West or come to Australia out of China. They're going to breathe the sweet air of freedom. They're going to learn about democracy, and then they're going to go back home. Yes, there's some exceptions, as you just noted. And they're going to go back home and tell their commie friends, and this will change China. And the problem, you just mentioned, a lot of political correctness and curbs on unalienable rights that you have. And the problem with American universities, a lot of them are anti-American. Actually, and different applies to a different part of the world. But one of the key figures of the Muslim Brotherhood studied in the United States, and it didn't make him pro-American. It made him hate America more. That's one thing. And even if people don't hate America, just the idea that they come here, get technical skills, and then go back and use them in China, and they're not promoting democracy or a more placid China. So that part of the equation just isn't working.
Christian, I just want to play you a clip of Trump and watch particularly the smile of satisfaction on his face. So he's reading out for the media to report on good economic results. Have a listen.
From, Joe Kiernan and Rick Santelli. This just came out, and we'll just play that for a second.
Personal income is up 0.8%. That is almost triple the expectations. I'll tell you, the income numbers, really, for the first 4 months of the year, they're stellar.
So at the end of the day, Trump will be judged on the American economy above all else. So how is the American economy going, Christian?
As it points out, and that was on an NBC media property, so this is a very anti-Trump left-wing media property, CNBC. But you have personal income going up, even adjusted for inflation, and that was something that happened during the first Trump administration and did not happen under Biden, where the middle class, all wage earners, actually were set back by inflation that moved faster than wages. Also, just general gross national product looking good, and everyone said, "Oh my God, tariffs are going to raise prices." It didn't happen. Prices are stable, and imports actually declined. So everything that the doomsdayers said would happen isn't happening. Now, the Federal Reserve, this should be a green light for the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates, because there's no inflation. Growth is a little bit slow, and you have some storm clouds on the horizon, and they're not going to do it. You have a Federal Reserve that I think wants to tank the economy to hurt Trump. Trump's putting a lot of pressure on Jerome Powell, of course, the Fed chairman, to change course.
The inflation numbers were fantastic that just came out in the last couple of days. But I want to ask you about this Judicial insurrection, as it's being called. Just about every single Trump policy seems to be have obstacles thrown its way by some activist judge appointed by a Democrat. How's the administration going to deal with that? How are they going to actually do what they said they were going to do when they're frustrated at every step?
Yeah, ultimately, I think they're going to win because I think this has really exposed that the mid-levels of the judiciary remain very activist. They're not just interpreting laws, they're trying to invent laws, trying to make laws that the legislative have, or trying to usurp powers that the Constitution gives to the president. But the Supreme Court, you still do have 6 people who think the Constitution means what it says, a 6-3 conservative majority. I do think Trump will lose on one thing this summer, which is birthright citizenship. I think the Constitution just plainly says if you were born here, you're an American. Trump has tried to refute that through executive order. He loses on that one, but everything else, I think, all of the powers of the presidency, his power to enforce immigration law, to revoke status of countries like, say, everyone from Venezuela is a political dissident. That's no longer true. That's what Biden said. Now, if you're the high level of the Venezuelan opposition, yeah, you're a refugee. If you just came here from Venezuela and want an upgrade to your life, I would probably be one of those people, but the fact is it wouldn't make me a legitimate refugee. So I think Trump ultimately wins. It's going to take some time. And this really actually, agitates conservatives and Trump voters who might sit out midterm elections next year to really go hard and make sure that Republicans pick up seats in the Senate, because that's, of course, where you get judges, conservative judges, confirmed.
James.
And all my life, in America, I always knew that from a kid that judges were the thing that, made it. That's what Reagan was all about. But I want to talk, though, about foreign policy just a little bit, too, because we've seen some interesting complexities, shall we say, here. We've seen this seeming sort of rift between the Trump administration and the Netanyahu government in Israel over questions of whether or not to attack Iran and also around Gaza. At the same time, we have seen Trump taking a far stronger line on Vladimir Putin after his continued attacks on Ukraine after, ceasefire talks and all that sort of thing. Walk us through where the Trump administration's foreign policy is going, because I think we don't pay enough attention to this as he tries to undo 2 of the great disasters that befell the world during the Biden administration, October 7th being one, and of course, the invasion of Ukraine being the other.
Right. I think there's really too much emphasis, and maybe the White House has some blame in this, in a breakthrough deal with Russia and Ukraine and a breakthrough deal with Iran. The White House, and I was just there yesterday, is sending very positive messages about a nuclear deal with Iran. Steve Witkoff, the negotiator, has sent a latest version to Tehran, and it all comes down to the question of reprocessing fuel and enriching fuel in Iran, whether it happens or not. So we'll see what they say. I'm actually more doubtful, but I think that Trump's first-term approach, which he's doing now, which is pressure on Iran, maximum pressure, probably would be just fine. Similar with Ukraine, it was always unlikely there's some magical word salad that will get the Russians to change their view of national interest, or to get the Ukrainians to accept the reality that they're not going to recover all the land that Russia has won at great expense. So those 2 things may just have to go on. It's unfortunate because in the case of Russia and Ukraine, it means more killing. But amid this, there's a successful foreign policy, which is a strong America that's not apologizing for itself, a military that's no longer woke, and in the Middle East, a recognition that the power is between the free world, countries like the United States and Australia that still have confidence in themselves, and those Gulf powers. It's not in cozying up to Iran, which is what the previous administration did. So I think if you step back from the deals, and also there's a huge, of course, trade realignment going on. Talks with China are going nowhere. But what that means is I think U.S. allies are in a very good position to have durable, lasting agreements that are good and that are a key part of the Trump foreign policy success.
Christian, I'm glad you mentioned word salad, because I wanted you to know that we just had Kamala Harris out here doing a conference, and I think that's one import from America we'd like a higher tariff on. Thank you very much. If you're going to send us any more of your woke politicians, please don't. Christian, always great to chat to you, and we'll chat again very soon.